This is Logical Logistics, where we cover shipping, supply chain, logistics, and everything in between. Welcome to the show.
Hey everybody, it's Joe Becht, Logical Logistics. Thanks for the emails and phone calls and everyone else, the response. It's great. We're all in this together. Today I want to cover some pretty solid economic predictions. And there's probabilities as far as what's going to happen with our economy. Obviously, this is not, nothing is set in stone, but these are pretty significant probabilities of what could happen with the future of our economy. And this is coming from RBC Wealth Management. They're pretty good, and when you look at the reality and the probabilities of each, I believe that they are, in a logical way, put some fears into perspective and put some outcomes as a matter of fact. So, with that being said, let me go over the five different scenarios that are being projected with this COVID-19 coronavirus outbreak pandemic. So the two least likely outcomes out of the five, there's a best case scenario, but it's lowest probability. That would be the virus basically disappears by late June. Fatality ratios come in much lower than thought, and it's more like the flu, and the economy comes roaring back. And this would be something where the third quarter numbers would just come roaring back to what it was. It would go even slightly above where it was in July, then level off, and we're good to go. But that's with the virus basically disappears by late June. Case fatality ratios come in much lower, and it's more like a flu outbreak. There's a 5% possibility of that. That being said, right now the projections are much lower than what was initially expected as far as the death rate, which is 60,000 right now it's at, which was much below the initial estimates, even below what Dr. Fauci and Dr. Brick said a few weeks ago at 200,000. 35% probability of a V-shape recurrence where the virus will remain, but much lower death rate than thought before. Therapeutics will start to work, and we're hoping to see more out of the therapeutics, and it will stave off significant death numbers. And this is a containment scenario. There's not a second wave of substance in the fall, and the recovery will come back in the tail end of the third quarter, but it doesn't overshoot. So we're looking to be back on track in August, September. So that's a 35% probability there. There's a check mark, 20%, where it's an adaptive shallow recovery. The infection rate and death curves remain elevated, and social distancing declines very gradually as the virus remains substantial health risk. Antibody tests would expect to increase markedly within the next month, and the economy could perhaps begin to open very gradually with folks who are immune and low risk able to go back and do business as usual, or gradually go back as business as usual. There would be no significant ramp up in activity until the middle of the year, which I believe is something that would be very welcome, all things considering. And then we'd be back on track not till 2021, but we'd be getting back on track from where we are now. There's a 35% chance of a double dip. And so we would start the economy up in May or June. Virus comes back in the fall. We'd have another decline and shutdown and social distancing, but we'd be better prepared to face this again. So what would happen is the economy would bounce back in June, July, September, then dip again when it returns in the fall, and then get back on track in 2021. Then the worst case scenario is also the at 5% is the best case scenario. So here we're looking at no let up in the virus, death rate remains high, growth hit prolonged at social distancing remains significant, antibody tests prove to be non-starters, therapeutics work modestly. Vaccine timeline remains uncertain, but it would be a path to a post 2008 shock. So we got past 2008. This is even predicting us getting past this. It's just going to be painful to get past this if this scenario contains. And I think what we're hearing is a lot of our politicians are looking at this 5% outcome and they want to be prepared for the worst case scenario. That being said, they're scaring a lot of people. But this shows that we wouldn't get back on track until October, November of 2021. But we'd still get back on track. So what I'm seeing out of these 5 scenarios are, yeah, we're going to be in some pain. People are going to be out of work. But there are stopgap measures. Even in the worst case scenario, there's measures that are going to get us back on track in a significant in an amount of time. We're going to see improvements next year instead, later than sooner. But that's a 5% chance. And there's also a 5% chance we're going to get back in the business in a month or two. But the more realistic scenarios that are being listed here are a V shape where it's going to just gradually go back through easing back into business. We're going to have a shallow recovery, but again, an easing back, but at a much slower gradual increase. And then something where we'll start and then the disease will come back, but we'll be more prepared. And then it will get back. What all these charts are saying is by 2021, I know, it's we're in the middle of April 2020 and we're an anxious society, but by 2021, we're going to recover. So I wanted to give you these 5 valid RBC wealth management scenarios that just were released today. I'm seeing where we can, if there's a web address where you can find those. I don't see a web address right now, but do some searching. What you can't do is look at the worst case scenario and get freaked out, and I think a lot of our politicians are doing that right now. I'm optimistic that we're going to get a vaccine pumped out. I mean, the resources are out there. A lot of people are out there. I think one of the issues right now is that we're having so much information. There's so much disorganization. What are we going to do? Are we going to antibody test? Are we going to test for the disease? Are we going to, what are you going to do? My personal thing is I think we should gradually get back to business by May 1st, May 15th to be extra cautious. I don't know if we can wait till June 1st. Gradually get back in the business. If you got tests out there, if you got a job, test your employees. They test for the disease, stay home, get better. They're negative, come to work. And just monitor people and go from there. When this was initially brought up, we were, as a country, very concerned about the hospital load. And it seems that we are flattening that curve, and the hospital load is now returning to normal. I know New York got killed, but even though in those circumstances, I'm hearing that the Javits Center and the SHIP, that was just precautions and they're not being used. So what we need to do is keep the hospital load. And again, I would like to see a scenario where you go to the hospital, you sprain your ankle, you want to go to the hospital. Okay, they test you. You got COVID? You got the coronavirus? Okay, you're going to the infectious disease or we're sending you home. You don't have it, come on into the hospital. Because obviously you don't want to enter someone with this into a hospital and then it breaks out throughout the hospital like a nursing home, right? So if we can get rational thinking out there instead of panic and all this mess. And I'm talking from our president down to our local village leadership. We need to work together and be more rational about this instead of just throwing this out there and that out there. And oh my God, it becomes mayhem. And we don't need mayhem. We need to have specific plans out there. But if you listen to the research and everything, there's positive research coming out. Everyone's working at breakneck speed to get things back together. And seeing these 5 outcomes, we're going to get there one way or another. It could be slightly painful or very painful, but that's your scenarios. So again, we got a 5% probability that it will come roaring back within the next month or two. We got a 35% possibility that it will gradually get back by the fall with no major outbreak in the fall. There is a 20% possibility that social distancing, we're going to gradually get back there, but we could, it will be a slower increase, but it will definitely get back there, and we would be able to handle the second wave. Much along the same lines, there's a 35% possibility that there'd be a relapse if it comes back in the fall and cause another decline in economic activity, but less drastic as what we're going through now, and we'd be better prepared to handle it, and then we'd be back on track. And then the worst case scenario is we never get back on track until 2021 when we get a vaccine and there's herd immunity. But eventually we're going to get back, and we're going to end this together. Again, this is Joe Becht, Logical Logistics. If you need some logistics help, we are getting inquiries through the podcast, and I really appreciate it. Contact me at joe@bellair.com, BELLAIR. You can call us at 1-800-621-2603. You can visit us at bellair.com. Logicallogistics.com, BES Logistics. Visit our YouTube page. A lot of good feedback there as well. So thanks again. And until next time, keep on hanging in there. We're in this together. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you want to drop us a line, email us at becht5@comcast.net. You can leave comments, or if you want to be a guest, becht5@comcast.net. Also, make sure to review us on iTunes or other media outlets that we're located on. And we'll see you next time on Logical Logistics.
Click the subscribe button for new videos every week and download us and review us on iTunes. Visit www.beslogistics.net for more logistics, transportation, and warehousing resources. Thanks for watching.